Nutritional studies are keeping us in business over here at Healthcare Triage. We're back again with meat eating and cancer. This is Healthcare Triage News. Let's waste no time to the research. A study published last week in the International Journal of Cancer reported an association between meat consumption and breast cancer. Data on consumption of different meats and meat cooking behaviors were gathered via a food frequency questionnaire from over 40,000 participants, and data on breast cancer diagnoses were gathered in a follow-up approximately 7.5 years later. The researchers concluded that increasing red meat consumption was associated with increased risk of invasive breast cancer, and that increasing consumption of poultry was associated with decreased risk, with no effect of meat cooking behaviors, such as cooking method and doneness. Swapping red meat for poultry, they claim, may cut women's risk of invasive breast cancer by more than a quarter, by 28% to be exact. I don't even know where to start. Maybe start with the fact that all participants were women with a family history of breast cancer. This population probably isn't the best place to start when trying to understand the general relationship between food and breast cancer, since there's likely a genetic component overwhelming everything else. Or maybe start with the fact that all data regarding type and amount of meat consumption were collected from a food frequency questionnaire administered one time. Or maybe start with the fact that the more than a quarter risk decrease reported by the study represents the relative risk decrease. What's the absolute risk decrease? About 0.01%. And thanks to Just Says Risk for figuring that out on Twitter. Do I really have to do the whole relative versus absolute risk again? They're gonna report the relative risk reduction, more than 25, when what you really care about is the absolute risk reduction, about 0.01. Even better, the number needed to treat. In this case, it's 10,000. 9,999 people who do this would see no benefit at all. One might, but maybe you don't care. Okay, you say, well, maybe that 1 in 10,000 might be me. Fine, but there's a much bigger issue here. The authors state in the press release that red meat has been identified as a probable carcinogen. Let me stress here, as one news source responsibly pointed out, red meat has not been established as a carcinogen. Let me repeat that. Red meat has not been established as a cause of cancer. It's been weakly associated with cancer. But ice cream consumption can be associated with shark attacks because more people eat ice cream in the summer when they go in the water. And I haven't seen any panic newscasters advising everyone to put down the rocky road. More on that in a moment. The authors also state in the press release that the mechanism behind poultry decreasing breast cancer risk is not clear. How are we talking mechanisms when we don't even know that poultry consumption reduces breast cancer in the first place? At this point, that's like talking about the mechanism between ice cream consumption and increasing shark attacks. And if we wanted to do that, first we'd have to figure out if eating ice cream actually increases shark attacks. To do that, we'd have to do some randomized controlled trials where we stuff one group of randomly chosen people full of ice cream and have a similarly random group that eats zero ice cream, and then we toss them all in a large shark tank. After appropriately analyzing our data, we see that the participants we stuffed with ice cream were not, in fact, attacked more often by sharks with a sweet tooth. Upon further investigation, we realized that time of year is a confounding factor in the initial ice cream shark attack association. In the summer, people are more likely to visit the beach, where ice cream is likely to be sold, and shark attacks are wont to happen. Ignore the fact that we never get approval from the study from an ethics board, or willing participants for that matter. The point here is that a concomitant increase in ice cream consumption and shark attacks is one of the classic examples warning against ringing the alarm bells for a correlation as though it were causation. And it's the same deal with meat and cancer studies. In fact, the discussion of this paper starts out by saying that, and I'm quoting, red meat consumption increased the risk of invasive breast cancer. Not that it was associated with an increased risk. We've heard over and over that reducing meat consumption reduces risk, despite the fact that the data are inconsistent and all of the evidence is correlative. We've got to do better. Hey, did you like this video? You might enjoy this other video on acrylamide and coffee as another thing that doesn't cause cancer. If you want to support the show in other ways, go to patreon.com/healthcaretriage, just like our research associate Joe Sevitz, and of course, our Surgeon Admiral Sam. And also you can support me by buying my book, The Bad Food Bible.